Hello, welcome to OJ Studios. Please enjoy Date Night by Olivia Julius.
Chapter 1 The Idea. It started as a joke. I honestly thought she was kidding when she first brought it up. Date night had always been our thing, once a week, no matter how busy work got, no matter how chaotic life became. It was our time to reconnect, to unwind. Lately, though, Melanie had been talking about wanting to spice things up. "You know what would be fun," she said one evening as we were cleaning up dinner. "What if you were the one to dress up for date night?" I laughed, tossing the towel over my shoulder. "What, like, put on a suit or something?" "No," she said, leaning against the counter with that mischievous look I knew too well. "I mean, what if you dressed up as a woman?" I paused, halfway to the fridge, waiting for her to laugh or crack a grin. But she didn't. She just kept looking at me, eyebrow arched in that way she does when she's serious. "You're joking, right?" She shook her head. "Not at all. It's just for fun. You've always said you'd try anything once." I wanted to protest, but the way she said it, so casual, like it was the most normal suggestion in the world, made me hesitate. It was Melanie, after all. The woman who convinced me to go skydiving on our honeymoon, who talked me into trying sushi for the first time, even though I was sure I'd hate it. And as much as I didn't want to admit it, she was usually right when she pushed me out of my comfort zone. Still, this felt different. "So, what, you want me to throw on one of your dresses and heels?" I asked, trying to make it sound like a joke, even though a small part of me was curious. "I'll help you," she said, her eyes sparkling. "I learned this new spell and I want to try it out." I raised an eyebrow, half expecting her to break into a grin and say, "Just kidding." But Melanie wasn't one for half measures, and the way she said she'd help made me pause. "Wait, spell? What do you mean by spell?" She shrugged casually, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "It's a small one. It's from this old book I found at that antique shop last week. It lets you transform into anyone you want, just temporarily. I thought it would be fun to have you experience what it's like, you know, from a woman's perspective." I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Magic? Spells? This was getting weirder by the minute. Yet, knowing Melanie, it wasn't entirely out of character for her to stumble across something strange and lean into it. After all, she was the one who convinced me to try an immersive role-playing weekend in the mountains last summer, something that ended up being much more enjoyable than I'd anticipated. "Okay," I said slowly, processing the absurdity of it all. "You're telling me you found a spell? And you want me to use it, to turn into a woman, for our date night?" She nodded, her excitement barely contained. "Just for one night. Think about it, it'll be fun. We can go out, get dinner, see how the world treats you differently. And if you hate it, I'll undo the spell right away, I promise. It's not permanent." I crossed my arms, still unsure. "And how exactly does this spell work?" Melanie smirked, a playful glint in her eyes. "You just say a few words, concentrate on who or what you want to look like, and boom. Instant transformation." I rubbed the back of my neck, thinking it over. The logical part of me wanted to laugh it off as nonsense, but another part, the part that had always trusted Melanie's wild ideas, was starting to get curious. "Besides, I'll even turn into a guy." I raised an eyebrow at her last comment. "Wait, you'll turn into a guy?" Melanie grinned. "Yeah, why not? It's only fair, right? You get to see what it's like from a woman's perspective, and I'll see things through a man's eyes for the night. Just imagine, the whole world flipped. It's like the ultimate empathy experiment." I stared at her, processing this new twist. It was strange enough to think about transforming into a woman for a date, but the idea of Melanie becoming a man added a whole new layer to the surreal situation. Could she really be serious? And if she was, would this even work? "Mel, this is," I hesitated, unsure how to put it. This is insane. She didn't flinch. Instead, she walked over to the kitchen drawer, pulled out a small, weathered book, and handed it to me. The cover was old, the kind of leather that had seen years of wear and tear, with gold lettering in a language I couldn't read. Inside, the pages were yellowed, filled with strange symbols and diagrams. "This is it?" I asked, flipping through the pages. She nodded, her excitement bubbling over. "Yup. Found it in that weird little shop on 5th Street. The guy running the place said it was legit. He even demonstrated a few small spells, like making a flower bloom instantly. It's real, trust me." I glanced down at the book again, still not fully convinced, but a little more intrigued. "So, you're telling me, if I say this spell, I'll look like a woman?" "Not just look like a woman," she corrected, taking the book back from me. "You'll be one, for the night, anyway. I mean, you'll still be you, but in a female body. Hair, skin, voice, everything. It's all temporary, though, 24 hours max." I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it. "What happens if I get stuck?" She rolled her eyes. "You won't. There's a reversal spell right here," she said, pointing to a different page in the book. "Besides, I'd never let that happen to you. It's completely safe. I even tested it, on a dog, but still. We'll be fine." I paced the kitchen, running my hands through my hair. I had questions, so many questions, but deep down, I knew Melanie. When she got an idea like this in her head, she didn't let go easily. And honestly, the more I thought about it, the more I realized how bizarrely interesting it could be. I mean, how many people ever get the chance to experience life in someone else's shoes, literally? "Okay," I said finally, turning back to her. "I'll do it. But only if you promise to undo it if things get too weird." Her face lit up with excitement. "Deal. This is going to be so much fun. You won't regret it, I swear." I wasn't entirely sure about that last part, but I couldn't back down now. Melanie was already reviewing plans about how cool it will be. Chapter 2, The Transformation. The following Friday, the air in our apartment buzzed with anticipation. Melanie was practically skipping around the place, flipping through the pages of her ancient spellbook while humming to herself. Meanwhile, I was standing in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection, trying to make sense of what was about to happen. "Okay, so how does this work exactly?" I asked, still uncertain. My heart was racing. Part of me was genuinely curious, but another part was screaming, "What are you doing?" Melanie didn't look up from the book. "It's simple. You just read these words, focus on the image of the person you want to become, and the spell will do the rest." She handed me the open book, her finger pointing to a page filled with unfamiliar characters and symbols. The words were strange, alien, even, but something about them felt powerful. As if they were imbued with a force I couldn't quite describe. I glanced back at Melanie. "And this won't hurt or anything?" She chuckled, walking over to stand beside me. "Nope. You'll feel a little tingle, maybe. But nothing painful." Taking a deep breath, I nodded. "All right, here goes." I stared at the page, trying to focus on the symbols. Then, following Melanie's instructions, I began to speak the words aloud. As I did, I concentrated on the image Melanie had helped me create in my mind, someone young, confident, with long, flowing brown hair, soft features, and bright eyes. Erica. That's the name Melanie had suggested, and it had stuck. As soon as the last word left my lips, I felt it.
A strange, tingling warmth spreading through my body. It started at my fingertips, slowly moving up my arms, down my chest, and all the way to my toes. It was like an electric current, but softer, more subtle. I gasped, startled by the sensation. "Are you okay?" Melanie asked, her voice filled with excitement. I think so, I managed to say, my voice already sounding different, softer, higher. I looked down at my hands. My fingers had changed, becoming slimmer, more delicate. I could feel my body shifting, transforming. My arms, once lean and muscular, became smaller, more feminine. My chest pushed out, and I felt my waist narrow. My clothes hung awkwardly on my shrinking frame, my shirt slipping off one shoulder as my body reshaped itself. "Oh my God," I whispered, watching in awe as my legs slimmed down and my hips widened. My hair grew longer, spilling down over my shoulders in soft waves. I reached up to touch it, marveling at the silky texture. My face felt different too, smoother, softer. I could feel my features changing, my cheekbones lifting, my lips becoming fuller. "Wow," Melanie whispered, her eyes wide as she watched the transformation. "You look amazing." I turned to the mirror, and for a moment, I didn't recognize the person staring back at me. I was beautiful. My reflection was that of a young woman in her early 20s, with long brown hair, bright green eyes, and a soft, almost ethereal glow to her skin. I blinked, raising a hand to my face, and watched as the woman in the mirror did the same. "Holy! This is real," I said, my voice now unmistakably feminine. It felt surreal, like I was in someone else's body, but at the same time, everything felt natural. I could still think and move like myself. It was just that the person doing it wasn't the same one I'd always been. Melanie grinned from ear to ear. "Told you it would work. You're officially Erica for the night." I took a deep breath, turning from side to side in the mirror, inspecting my new body. My clothes were hanging loosely, no longer fitting the way they were supposed to. Melanie must have noticed because she was already rifling through her closet, pulling out dresses, skirts, and shoes. "Here, try these on," she said, handing me a black dress. "I got a few things that I think will fit you now." I hesitated, staring at the dress. "You really thought this through, didn't you?" She shrugged, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "I told you this is going to be fun. Just wait until we go out." I took the black lacy bra from her. I never worn one before, and the idea of putting one on felt both foreign and exhilarating. I glanced back at Melanie, who was watching me with a mixture of excitement and curiosity. "You'll get the hang of it," she said, winking. "It's not as hard as it looks." I fumbled with the straps for a moment, trying to figure out how to fasten the clasp. Melanie stepped closer and helped me, her hands moving deftly as if she'd done it 1,000 times, because of course she had. "There you go," she said, stepping back to admire her handiwork. "Now try the dress." I slipped into the dress, feeling a little awkward at first. It was soft, flowing, and it fit perfectly, hugging my new curves in all the right places. Melanie zipped up the back of the dress, encasing me inside of it. Melanie then handed me a pair of sandals, and soon I was standing in front of the mirror again, fully dressed and fully transformed. "Erica, well," Melanie asked, stepping back to admire her work. "What do you think?" I turned to face her, still adjusting to the new sensations of being in this body. I don't know. It's weird, but also kind of amazing." She smiled, nodding approvingly. "See, I knew you'd like it. Now, are you ready for our date?" I blinked, suddenly realizing what she meant. "You're serious? We're actually going out like this?" "Of course," Melanie laughed. "What's the point of transforming if you're just going to stay in? We're going to dinner, and you, my dear Erica, are going to experience the world through a whole new lens tonight." I stared at her, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. This was really happening. I was going out into the world as someone else, as Erica. And Melanie, she was going to transform into a man too. I took a deep breath. "All right, let's do this." Melanie clapped her hands, practically bouncing with excitement. "This is going to be the best date night ever." "So what about you?" I asked, noticing she hasn't changed yet. "I'll meet you there," she said, flipping through the pages of the old spellbook again. "Just go ahead and make the reservation. I'll transform and join you at the restaurant as soon as I'm ready." "You're serious about this?" I asked, glancing at her. She gave me a playful smirk. "Absolutely. It's part of the experience, Erica. Go out, grab some attention. Maybe even flirt a little. It'll be fun. Just imagine what you'll learn." "Flirt?" I felt a wave of panic. I don't even know how to. Relax, you'll figure it out. People will treat you differently, and you'll learn a lot just by observing. Besides, you look incredible, she said with a wink. Go on, I'll be there soon. I took a deep breath, giving myself one last look in the mirror. With Melanie's encouragement echoing in my mind, I grabbed the small purse she'd handed me, tucked it under my arm, and headed out the door. The walk to the restaurant felt like a surreal dream. Every step I took was a reminder that I wasn't in my own body. The soft fabric of the dress brushed against my legs, the gentle sway of my hips felt foreign, and the way my sandals clicked on the pavement was strangely rhythmic. As I passed by people on the street, I noticed their gazes lingering on me. Some offered polite smiles. Others glanced for a little longer than usual, their eyes trailing over my new form. I felt exposed in a way I'd never experienced before, but at the same time, there was a strange thrill to it. For the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. People noticed me. I arrived at the restaurant. My nerves heightened as I stepped through the glass doors. The hostess gave me a bright smile as I approached. "Good evening," she said. "Do you have a reservation?" I cleared my throat, trying to get used to the sound of my new voice. "Yes, under Erica." The name felt strange on my tongue, but the hostess didn't bat an eye. She checked the list and nodded. "Right this way." As I followed her through the restaurant, I could feel the eyes of other diners turning toward me. It wasn't my imagination. The attention was real. It made me both nervous and exhilarated. The hostess led me to a cozy booth near the back of the restaurant, dimly lit with a warm, intimate ambience. I slipped into the seat, adjusting the dress as I settled in. For a few minutes, I just sat there, taking it all in. The world felt different from this perspective, subtle, but undeniable. The waiter arrived shortly after, a friendly young man with a charming smile. He handed me the menu, his gaze lingering on me for just a second longer than it probably should have. "What can I get for you tonight, miss?" he asked, his tone polite but warm. I glanced at the menu, trying to focus on the words but still distracted by the way he'd said miss. It was such a small thing, but it felt significant. I'll just have water," I said. "My date will be here soon." The waiter smiled, giving a nod. "Of course, take your time." As he walked away, I leaned back in the booth, trying to process everything. The night had only just begun, and already I was grappling with 1,000 new sensations, emotions, and experiences. The gentle hum of conversations around me, the clink of silverware on plates, and the soft glow of candlelight. It all felt heightened somehow, more intense in this new body. I glanced down at my hands, which rested on the table. My fingers were slender, adorned with soft, polished nails. I caught sight of my reflection in the polished glass window next to me. Erica stared back, a picture of calm. But beneath that serene exterior was a whirlwind of thoughts. What would Melanie look like when she arrived? Would I even recognize her as a man? And how would people react to us together? The curiosity gnawed at me, mixing with the slight nervousness that had settled in the pit of my stomach. Just then my phone buzzed. A message from Melanie. "Running a bit late, but I'm on my way. Don't worry, you've got this. Order some appetizers if you're hungry. Can't wait to see you, Erica." I chuckled softly to myself. Leave it to Melanie to throw me into the deep end. But in some strange way, it felt liberating. Here I was, sitting in a fancy restaurant, transformed into a version of myself I never thought possible, waiting for my wife, who would soon arrive in a completely different form. The waiter returned with my water, along with a warm basket of bread. "Still waiting on your date?" he asked, his tone casual but friendly. "Yeah, he should be here any minute," I replied, the words slipping out before I even realized how naturally they came. I wasn't used to referring to Melanie as he, but it felt right in the context of this strange, magical evening. I sipped the water, trying to keep my nerves in check. People around me were laughing, talking, and sharing moments that felt so ordinary, but for me, tonight was anything but. I found myself studying them, couples, friends, strangers passing by. How many of them had any idea what it was like to be in someone else's shoes? To live, even for a brief moment, in a body that wasn't theirs? My thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the restaurant door opening. I glanced up, and there he was, Melanie, or rather, the man she had become. Tall, with short cropped hair, a sharp jawline, and broad shoulders, she cut a striking figure in the tailored suit that fit perfectly. For a second, I almost didn't recognize her. But then I saw the glint in his eyes, the familiar mischievous smirk playing at the corner of his lips, and I knew it was her. Melanie, now a man, walked confidently over to the table, and as he approached, I couldn't help but stare. He was handsome in a way that felt surreal, almost like a character stepping out of a movie. I had to think for a moment. The name she had picked out for her male self was Matt. Well, Erica, he said, his voice deeper, richer, but still carrying that same teasing tone. You look stunning. I blushed, feeling a strange flutter of excitement. You're not looking too bad yourself, I managed, my voice a little breathless. It was odd, seeing him like this, but at the same time, it was exhilarating. This was Melanie, after all, the person I loved, now standing before me in an entirely new form. Matt sat down across from me, leaning back with a grin. So, how's it been so far? How does the world look from your new perspective? I laughed, shaking my head. It's different. I mean, people definitely look at me differently. I can feel it. Matt raised an eyebrow, his smirk widening. And how does that feel? I paused, thinking about it. Honestly, it's kind of empowering, but also a little overwhelming. It's like everywhere I go, I'm noticed. People don't just pass me by, they pay attention. Matt nodded, leaning in a little. Welcome to my world, he said, his tone softening. That's the thing about being seen. There's power in it, but there's also a kind of vulnerability. I looked at him, my curiosity piqued. And what about you? How does it feel? Being like this? He shrugged, glancing down at himself. It's different. I mean, I'm still me, but everything feels more solid, like people give me space. I'm not used to that. We sat in silence for a moment, both of us processing the strange new realities we were experiencing. It was a lot to take in, but there was also something exhilarating about it, about seeing the world through new eyes, even if just for one night. The waiter came out and took our orders. After he was done, I leaned forward, putting my head on my hands. So are we doing anything else tonight? I asked. Maybe, Matt said with a bit of a wink. Matt leaned back, his expression playful yet thoughtful. Depends on how adventurous you're feeling tonight, Erica. His voice had a confident edge that Melanie never quite had as a woman. It was strange but also intriguing, like we were playing out an elaborate experiment neither of us fully understood yet. I chuckled nervously, sipping my water. I think I've already crossed the line into adventurous territory, don't you? Matt smirked. True, but there's always more to explore. He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice to a more intimate tone. We don't have to change out of these bodies for another 22 hours. I rented us a room at the lodge just for tonight. I swallowed, my pulse quickening at Matt's words. The intensity in his gaze was unmistakable. There was something electric between us, a new kind of chemistry that both excited and unnerved me. It was still Melanie, the person I knew better than anyone, but this was a new layer to our relationship, one that hadn't existed before. A room at the lodge, I echoed, my voice a little breathless. Matt smiled, leaning back in his chair with a casual ease that belied the weight of a suggestion. Just for tonight, no pressure. I thought it'd be interesting to see where this transformation takes us, beyond just the surface. I looked down at my hands again, still not entirely used to their delicate feminine shape. The idea of spending the night like this, fully immersed in these new identities, was thrilling and terrifying all at once. Part of me was curious to push the boundaries, to see how far this experiment could go. But another part of me hesitated, unsure of how deep we really wanted to dive into this role reversal. What are you thinking? Matt asked, his voice soft now, gentle. It was Melanie's voice beneath the masculine tone, the familiar warmth that I loved so much. I took a deep breath, meeting his gaze. I'm thinking this is a lot to take in, but also that it could be interesting. I just didn't expect you to take it this far. He chuckled softly. Neither did I, honestly, but there's something about this whole experience that feels liberating. Like we get to step out of ourselves for a bit and just play. Play, I repeated, rolling the word around in my mind. It wasn't just about the physical transformation. It was about stepping into a new role, embracing a different side of ourselves that we hadn't explored before. And maybe, just maybe, there was something to learn here, about each other, about ourselves. Okay, I said finally, my heart pounding. Let's do it. Let's see where the night takes us. Matt's smile widened, his eyes sparkling with excitement. You won't regret it, Erica. Dinner passed in a blur of laughter, conversation, and the odd sensation of being seen and treated completely differently than I ever had before. The way the waiter smiled at me, the glances from other patrons, even the subtle changes in the way Matt interacted with me, it all felt like part of this strange, exhilarating game we were playing. When the check came, Matt insisted on paying, flashing a confident grin as he handed over his card. It was a simple gesture, but it struck me how naturally he had fallen into the role of the suave, attentive man. And, unexpectedly, I found myself liking the dynamic. As we left the restaurant, the cool night air brushed against my skin, and I couldn't help but feel a flutter of nervous anticipation. Matt walked beside me, his presence steady and reassuring, and for the first time in the evening, I allowed myself to fully relax into the experience. Ready for the next part of the adventure? He asked, holding out his hand. I hesitated for only a second before taking it, feeling the warmth of his hand in mine. Lead the way. The lodge was only a short drive away, nestled in a secluded part of the city, offering a quiet, intimate atmosphere that felt perfect for the continuation of our unusual date. As we walked into the cozy lobby, the receptionist barely glanced up, offering a friendly smile as Matt checked us in. I stood beside him, still adjusting to the surreal reality that we were doing this, that we were going to spend the night in these borrowed bodies. The room itself was warm and inviting, with soft lighting and a large, comfortable bed in the center. I stood at the doorway for a moment, taking it all in, while Matt closed the door behind us. Well, he said, his voice low and full of that playful confidence again. Here we are. I turned to face him, my heart pounding once more. So what now? He stepped closer, his hand reaching out to gently brush a strand of hair from my face. The touch was soft, tender, and yet it sent a shiver down my spine. Now, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper, we see just how far we can take this. There was no turning back now. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me, the excitement, the curiosity, the fear of the unknown. But at the same time, there was a sense of freedom in letting go, in allowing ourselves to explore this strange new chapter in our relationship. And as Matt leaned in, his lips hovering just above mine, I realized that maybe, just maybe, this was exactly the kind of adventure we both needed. He took out a bikini from a bag and handed it to me. I stared at the bikini in Matt's hand, my heart racing. A bikini? I asked, raising an eyebrow as I took the soft fabric from him. He grinned, leaning back against the bedpost. I figured if we're going to fully embrace this transformation, we might as well go all in. The lodge has a hot tub, and I thought, why not? I looked down at the bikini, feeling both amused and apprehensive. You're really pushing the limits here, aren't you? Matt chuckled, his deep, masculine voice sending a new kind of thrill through me. You could say that. But hey, you said you were up for an adventure, right? I couldn't deny it. The idea of lounging in a hot tub, fully transformed into Erica, had a strange appeal. There was something about the thought of feeling the water, experiencing the night in this body that intrigued me. But at the same time, the vulnerability of being exposed, even in a small, secluded lodge, was intimidating. Still, I had come this far, and the look in Matt's eyes told me he wasn't about to let me back out now. I took a deep breath and nodded. All right, let's do it. The moment I said it, Matt's smile widened, and he quickly began rummaging through his bag, pulling out a pair of swim trunks for himself. You won't regret this, I promise, he said, disappearing into the bathroom to change. Left alone in the room, I slipped out of the dress Melanie had picked for me and examined the bikini in my hands. It was a delicate, black two-piece that I never would have imagined wearing before tonight. But now, standing there in front of the mirror as Erica, it felt right. I took a deep breath and began to put it on, my hands trembling slightly as I adjusted the straps and tied the strings at the back. The fabric hugged my curves perfectly, accentuating the feminine shape that I was still getting used to. My heart raced, a blend of nerves and excitement swirling inside me. Every small tug on the fabric felt like a delicate step into a new version of myself, one I hadn't fully come to terms with yet. When I finally stood back and looked at myself in the mirror, I couldn't help but marvel at the transformation once again. The reflection staring back at me was both familiar and foreign, a different version of me that I had never imagined. Erica stared back at me, confident and alluring. Her eyes held a boldness I didn't recognize in my usual self, as though this version of me had always been waiting beneath the surface. I ran a hand down my side, feeling the smoothness of my skin, the way my body moved in this new form. It was surreal, the way this body responded, how natural it felt yet so foreign. A strange mix of power and vulnerability settled over me as I swayed slightly, testing out the feel of it. It was still me, but at the same time it wasn't. I was someone else, someone I hadn't fully met yet. For the first time that night, I felt a strange sense of pride in how I looked. Pride in this person I was becoming, in the courage it took to slip into this skin. A soft smile crept onto my lips, and I couldn't help but admire the way Erica smiled back. Bold, confident, unafraid. It wasn't just about the look, it was about who I was starting to believe I could be. Just as I was about to turn away, the door to the bathroom opened, and Matt emerged, wearing his swim trunks and a relaxed grin. He stopped when he saw me, his eyes widening slightly. "Wow," he said softly, his voice full of genuine admiration. "You look incredible." I blushed, my nerves fluttering all over again. "Thanks," I said, feeling oddly shy. "You're not looking so bad yourself." He chuckled, walking over to me and taking my hand. "Come on, the hot tub is waiting." The walk to the hot tub was quiet, the air cool against my skin as we made our way through the lodge's dimly lit hallways. By the time we reached the private outdoor terrace, I was both nervous and excited, the anticipation building with every step. The hot tub sat beneath a canopy of trees, the water bubbling softly, casting a warm, inviting glow. Matt stepped in first, lowering himself into the steaming water with a contented sigh. I hesitated for a moment before following, slipping into the tub beside him. The heat enveloped me instantly, soothing my nerves and relaxing my muscles. I closed my eyes, letting the sensation wash over me. It was strange, feeling the water against my new skin, the way my body floated lightly in the warm embrace of the tub. But it was also freeing. Matt leaned back, watching me with a gentle smile. "How are you feeling?" I opened my eyes and smiled back. "Surprisingly good. This is nice." He nodded, his hand finding mine beneath the water. "I told you it would be. It's like we've stepped into a completely different world tonight." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, the sounds of the night surrounding us, the bubbling of the hot tub lulling us into a relaxed state. The stars twinkled overhead, and the moon cast a soft, silvery light over the terrace. It was peaceful, intimate, and completely surreal. After a while, Matt broke the silence, his voice low and thoughtful. "You know, I wasn't sure how this would go tonight. I mean, I had this idea, but I didn't know if it would actually work." I turned to him, curious. "What do you mean?" He smiled, looking down at the water. "This whole transformation. I wasn't sure if we'd be able to really embrace it. But I think we have. I think we've learned a lot about ourselves, about each other." I nodded, understanding what he meant. "Yeah, it's definitely been eye-opening. I never thought I'd see myself like this, or see you like that." Matt chuckled softly. "It's crazy, isn't it? But also kind of beautiful." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the hot tub. "Yeah, it really is." We sat in the tub for a while longer, the conversation flowing easily between us. We talked about the experience, about how it felt to be in these new bodies, and about the things we'd learned about gender, identity, and perception. It was a deep, meaningful conversation, one that brought us even closer together. As the night wore on, we eventually climbed out of the tub, wrapped in soft towels, and made our way back to the room. The air was cool, but there was a warmth between us that carried us through the night. I got out of the bikini, and Matt gave me a lacy black nightgown that looked like it would be way too short for me. I stood in the dimly lit room, holding the nightgown in my hands, still feeling the effects of the evening's surreal adventure. I glanced at Matt, who was now lounging comfortably on the bed, watching me with that same playful grin he'd had all night. It was Melanie underneath it all, but for the time being, we were someone else entirely. The lacy black nightgown felt delicate between my fingers, and I hesitated, a mixture of curiosity and nerves fluttering in my chest. "This seems a little much," I said, holding it up for him to see. Matt chuckled softly, propping himself up on his elbows. Come on, Erika. You've come this far. Why stop now? I raised an eyebrow, amused but also a little apprehensive. The night had already taken so many unexpected turns, but the thought of slipping into something like this, after everything, felt like the next step in fully embracing this experience. I took a deep breath and stepped behind the changing screen in the room, pulling the gown over my head. It was shorter than I expected, just barely grazing my thighs, the lace brushing softly against my skin. I looked down at myself, marveling at how naturally I had fallen into this new identity. A part of me felt exposed, but another part, the part that had been growing all evening, felt confident, even empowered. Well, I called out, stepping out from behind the screen, feeling the cool air hit my bare legs. Matt's eyes widened slightly as he took me in, his playful grin softening into something more appreciative. You look incredible, he said, his voice low and sincere. I blushed, a nervous smile tugging at my lips. You've said that a few times tonight. Because it's true, Matt replied, his gaze steady as he sat up, motioning for me to join him on the bed. You've really embraced this whole experience, and I'm proud of you. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me at his words. I walked over to the bed and sat down beside him, still feeling the weight of the night's events, the way we had both let ourselves step into these new roles without holding back. It was strange, yes, but it was also liberating in ways I hadn't anticipated. For a few moments, we sat in comfortable silence, the soft glow of the bedside lamp casting long shadows across the room. I leaned back, closing my eyes, feeling the weight of the night settle over me. What do you think happens after this? I asked, my voice quiet in the stillness of the room. Matt was quiet for a moment, then he spoke, his voice thoughtful. I think we go back to being ourselves tomorrow, but that doesn't mean we'll be the same as we were before. We've learned something tonight, about each other, about ourselves. I nodded, understanding what he meant. This experience, as strange as it had been, had opened up a new perspective on our relationship. We'd seen each other in a completely different light, and that wasn't something we could just forget. You think we'll ever do something like this again? I asked, half joking but also curious. Matt chuckled softly, leaning back beside me. Who knows? Maybe. But even if we don't, I think we've proven to ourselves that we can handle anything together. Even a night like this. I smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. He was right. We had pushed the boundaries of what we thought was possible, and in doing so, we discovered new layers to our relationship, ones we might never have explored otherwise. As the night deepened, we finally settled into bed, the weight of the day's changes still present but gradually dissolving into the background as exhaustion set in. Matt reached over, his hand moving gently to switch off the bedside lamp, and the room surrendered to darkness. Good night, Erika, he whispered, his voice a comforting mix of warmth and gravity. I smiled, the darkness softening everything but the closeness between us, and whispered back, Good night, Matt. We kissed, his beard grazing my skin, a familiar and intimate touch that lingered long after. The world outside our window was quiet, the stars shining brightly above, and as I closed my eyes, Chapter 3, the next morning, I awoke to the soft glow of sunlight filtering through the curtains, casting a gentle warmth across the room. For a moment, I forgot where I was, who I was. The previous night felt like a distant dream, a surreal adventure that seemed too impossible to have been real. But then, as I shifted under the covers, I felt the delicate lace of a nightgown against my skin, the unfamiliar weight of long hair tickling my neck, and the soft rise and fall of my chest. Erika, I was still her. I sat up slowly, rubbing the sleep from my eyes, and glanced over at the figure beside me. Matt, Melanie, was still sleeping, his strong, masculine form relaxed in the morning light. He looked peaceful, his features softened by sleep, and for a moment I just watched him, trying to process everything we had experienced together. The events of the night before came rushing back in vivid detail. The transformation, the dinner, the way we had explored each other's new identities in ways I'd never imagined. It felt like we had crossed into a new realm, one where the boundaries of who we were didn't quite exist in the same way anymore. But now, With the sun rising and reality creeping back in, I couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. Would we return to our old selves as easily as we had slipped into these new ones? Would things be the same between us? Or had something fundamentally shifted? As if sensing my thoughts, Matt stirred beside me. He let out a soft groan, stretching his arms above his head before his eyes fluttered open. For a moment, he looked confused, much like I had been when I first woke up. But then his gaze settled on me, and a slow, sleepy smile spread across his face. "Morning," he murmured, his voice still deep and gravelly from sleep. "How do you feel?" I hesitated, unsure how to answer that question. How did I feel? Physically, I was still Erica, but emotionally it was more complicated. I wasn't entirely sure what I was supposed to feel after a night like that. "I feel different," I said finally, my voice soft, unsure. "But not in a bad way. Just different." Matt nodded, propping himself up on one elbow as he studied me with those familiar eyes. "Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like we're still ourselves, but there's something more now. Something we can't really undo, even if we wanted to." I met his gaze, feeling a strange mix of emotions: relief, curiosity, excitement, and even a little fear. He was right. This wasn't just about the physical transformation anymore. It was about how we had seen each other in a completely new way, how we had broken down the walls of what we thought we knew about ourselves and our relationship. "I don't think we'll ever see each other the same way again," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Matt smiled, his hand reaching out to gently brush a strand of hair from my face, just like he had done the night before. "No, I don't think we will. But that's not a bad thing. If anything, I think it makes us stronger." I smiled back, feeling a warmth spread through me. It was comforting, knowing that we had come out of this experience closer, more connected than ever before. Whatever happened next, I knew we could handle it. We lay there for a while longer, wrapped in the quiet intimacy of the morning, neither of us rushing to break the moment. Eventually, though, reality started to creep back in. The responsibilities of the day, the promise that we would soon return to our original forms. Matt let out a soft sigh, glancing over at the clock. "Well, I guess it's time to start thinking about going back." I nodded, the weight of his words sinking in. As much as I had enjoyed the experience of being Erica, I knew we couldn't stay like this forever. The spell had been temporary, and soon we would return to our everyday lives. But the question lingered in the air. Would anything really be the same after this? "Do you want to do the honors?" I asked, half joking as I gestured toward the old spellbook lying on the nightstand. Matt chuckled, shaking his head. "I think we should do it together, don't you?" I smiled, nodding in agreement. Together. That was how we had started this adventure, and that was how we would end it. We climbed out of bed and stood side by side, the morning light casting soft shadows across our transformed bodies. Matt opened the spellbook, flipping to the page with the reversal spell. The words, once strange and unfamiliar, now seemed almost comforting in their simplicity. "Ready?" he asked, his voice gentle. I took a deep breath, glancing down at my reflection in the mirror one last time. Erica stared back at me, her green eyes wide with curiosity, her soft features framed by long brown hair. It was strange to think that in a few moments she would be gone, replaced by the person I had always been. But I wasn't scared. Not anymore. "Ready," I said. Together, we spoke the words of the spell, our voices blending in perfect harmony.
As the final syllable left our lips, I felt that same tingling warmth spreading through my body, the same sensation I had felt during the transformation, only this time, it was different. Instead of shifting into something new, I felt myself returning to the familiar shape and form I had known all my life. My hair shortened, my frame broadened, and the delicate curves of Erica melted away, replaced by the more solid, muscular contours of my original body. I glanced over at Matt, Melanie now, and watched as her features softened, her hair growing out, her figure returning to its usual shape. Within moments, we were ourselves again. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, the face I had known for so long staring back at me. It felt strange, like I was seeing it for the first time in a long while. I turned to Melanie, who was watching me with a soft smile. "Welcome back," she said, her voice full of warmth. I smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle over me. Welcome back. We stood there in silence for a moment, letting the reality of the situation sink in. The spell had ended, but the experience, the adventure we had shared, would stay with us forever. I'm glad we did this, I said, reaching out to take her hand. Melanie squeezed my hand, her eyes full of love and understanding. Me too. It was, more than I expected. I chuckled softly. Yeah. More than I expected, too. As we stood there, hand in hand, I realized that we had unlocked something new in our relationship, something that went beyond physical transformation. We had seen each other in ways that most people never got the chance to experience, and that had changed us both in ways we couldn't fully understand yet. But one thing was clear, we were stronger together because of it. And whatever the future held, I knew we were ready for it, because if we could handle a night like that, we could handle anything.